something, and I got to go to the store where I do my like facial products and stuff. So I feel a little bit normal in this moment. I wasn't ready for him to start touching around my mouth, so I was like, yeah,
Got you.
just
Got you.
clean up what you can in the way that you can, and then we good.
Leave the rest of that alone.
Right, right. And I have clippers and stuff at home, so I've been trying to maintain it, but it's still not the same. And you don't want to do an oops, and you gotta look at that for the next week or so. Uh, luckily, my hair grow back real fast, so I don't get the oops too long. But go ahead. So I was like, something turned out at me. But I'm really excited. Curtis should be in here in a few moments. Curtis has been my co-host for the last couple Fridays, and we do what I like to call his story. And it's really kind of a passion project of mine, and helping myself as a black man and the black men that I know and I come across deal with a lot of issues that we have been facing. We talked about police brutality. We talked a little bit about uh, being touched, and a lot of really sensitive issues when it comes to men. There you go. But me and Curtis have been having some really interesting conversations off air, and we got to figure out how to capsulize those conversations, Curtis, so we can, because I think we got to water them down once we get to air. But I want to
Yeah.
really get a honest conversation. But Curtis is back, and today I have this gentleman who I've met as an actor, and now we're both in the school system, and he works a lot harder with the kids than I do. But Mr. George, this individual is a very talented young man, and I've been trying to get him to come on the show, and he finally has time in this quarantine. I've been catching the best of him because of this quarantine. So thank it has some blessings in it. You've been able to like make time for each other. But George, if you can start by introducing yourself, let us know who you are, kind of your rundown as an artist, educator, activist, dad.
Yeah. Hey Curtis, how you doing, man?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So my name is George Buntin. I am an actor, or I'm still an actor. I'm on hiatus right now.
Not too long. You're about to put him to work. You're about to put him to work.
Was about 2 years ago. And during the day, I am a community school coordinator for Elevate Baltimore, which is a nonprofit organization that works in the OST, or out of school time space, along with one of the lead and is also one of the lead agencies for the community school strategy here in Baltimore City. I do some acting. I am currently now a father of 5.
My God.
Father of 2. Met a wonderful.
I do that on purpose over and over again. I can't.
Well, I was a father. I was a father of 2, and I met me a queen.
Okay.
And she had 2.
Okay.
And then we just recently, about 4 months ago, welcomed our young baby boy, baby Maximus, to the world. So it's been a definite blessing. He has been the upside to the whole COVID quarantine, all that stuff. Because instead of taking a couple weeks of paternity leave, I've basically been here with him on a daily basis, working from home, and so that's been my saving grace. I know a lot of people, this isolation and just kind of like having to slow down a life has been tough on some people, and it's been kind of the opposite for me. So I really feel fortunate. He came literally. He was born 2 weeks before they shut everything down. and so it was that's been great. I am also the Western District representative for the Baltimore City Civilian Review Board. We are the quasi-independent agency that takes in and we hear complaints from the public when they've had run-ins, negative interactions or run-ins with the police. We look over those cases and we make recommendations to the Baltimore City Police Department and Commissioner Harrison with any recommendations that we come to, or whatever recommendation we concluded. I do as much volunteer work as I can. Trying to get out there. I just recently started training with the Baltimore Mediation Center to become a mediating volunteer, and really learning how to be that rock in between people who need some mediation, who need somebody to come to the center. And that's pretty much it, man. I've been talking with Nate because I really feel like it's time for me to get back to the acting. And I've been having some conversations with this brother on some of the best ways to do it. He's somebody I've worked with, I've had tremendous respect for him for a long time. And I think a lot of it just has to do with his drive and work ethic. Nate has always struck me as a person that's like, look, we gotta get it done.
I like to eat, sir. Gotta get that meal on that table.
Huh?
Gotta get that meal on that table.
Right. You've always really exuded that. You've always really exuded that for me. Like, you know, you've always been kind of no nonsense. We gotta get this done. Focus is impeccable. And it's something that I've always noticed and always admired, even if I never told you. That's how I've always you.
You can always just send a check. I take checks as forms of
I gotta get a check first.
Okay, so I got you.
When I get the check, you know what I mean? I have
that's what we're working on. That's what we're working on now. So
I have no intention of
figure that out.
My fortune once it starts rolling in.
Claim it, reach up and claim it. But today, and I asked George, I wanted to kind of start blending in, and myself and Curtis will be inviting people on, and just to share that conversation. Part of what I think from my perspective, what me and Curtis talk about, we're not feeling like we're bashing anybody outside of being of a Black man, but the idea of we have to have our voice, and often we don't feel as though we have a voice or we have license to be able to express or sound off that voice. Okay. And this space right here is our contribution to helping Black men tell your story, and feel vindicated and going through it, getting through it, or needing to go through it or get through it. And we're not perfect. Neither of us are claiming to be Dr. Phil or Dr. anything, but we both have experiences. And being two Black men coming from similar backgrounds but different backgrounds, I wanted to be able to share that space with individuals that I know that I can reach, and just Black men in general. Today's topic, we're going to deal with that idea of feeling protected, or not, or lack thereof protection. And it's a sensitive issue because it requires for us to have a certain level of honesty about where we've been and who we've been around and how we felt about those things. I shared a couple of weeks ago, I had Tracy Jiggets on, and I invited her on because I wanted to say thank you. We had an incident online, me sticking my nose in a conversation, a post, and automatically getting backlash from my perspective. When it was a public profile, a public platform for me to be able to express my opinions and being attacked. And I felt words like I was attacking someone, or I was being a misogynistic. And I saw where that was going.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that.
Totally left from where the conversation started, but it got to that point. And Tracy came in without me realizing, and George knows Tracy and knows the type of woman she is. Lord. Instantly took my defense, and I was stunned because that doesn't normally happen. Normally, all the Black women jump on a bandwagon when the word misogynistic or attack, any of those problematic words or traumatic words come up. Black women normally connect, but the understanding of who I was and my integrity was, I'm not that person at all. She came in and rectified the situation and kind of really dissolved it from getting any bigger than what it could have gotten. And I rarely, I'm not gonna say never, but I rarely felt that level of protection from another Black woman that wasn't my mother. And that did something to me, and that kind of united myself. And I'm not gonna say united as if we kind of coalitioned up, but that's how I kind of met Curtis. And me and him had a conversation this weekend, and it was a number of conversations we had, and this kept being kind of like a red flag item about feeling protected. So I'm gonna let Curtis talk a little bit and give his perspective on today's topic and tell us how he feeling and all that jazz.
Okay. Man. Yeah, so
spotlight.
Yeah. Well, the protection piece, especially when it comes to young males being raised in matriarchy, I can only I gotta speak from that angle.
Right.
Some of the things that I've witnessed. Just let me give you a small example.
Mm-hmm.
I had 4 sisters, no brothers. Okay. My grandparents on my mom's side had 5 daughters, 2 sons. Okay. The makeup of the family and the structure as far as who were the primary disciplinarians and whose ideas and I guess behaviors we were told to instructions as far as behavior we were told to follow came from the women in the family.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the things were things that I would consider just to be, neutrally understood from both the masculine and feminine perspective, but some things such as the certain expectations that are placed on males to be protectors, providers, and so on. These things were things that were drilled into my head as a child. When I told the women in my family that I wanted to be a school teacher, this is my first example. What they would say to me is, school teacher, this came out of at least 3 of their mouths, a school teacher. How are you going to take care of a woman and children on a school teacher's salary? So in one instance, I felt like one of the things that I was passionate about was being killed, because it was something that I was genuinely passionate about that had no attachment to do with the expectation of being able to take care of a woman and children. So because they couldn't see that, how someone, I guess that's what you would call a blue collar job, I guess, so to speak, which most of America is blue collar, which, but I guess the things that fed their appetite for how life was supposed to look were the things that they were passing on to the young men and the family, because they were the ones raising us. So, now I come from a 2-parent household, but it was a strong Christian foundation laid there, Pentecostal Holiness Church type of upbringing. So, but my parents didn't really come from those types of households. So they made conscious decisions to rear us different. And in doing that, what I noticed is my father being a military guy, many times he was away in my younger years. That's another reason that the women had so much, outside of it being a small group of men in my family, and those men being military and some of them being unhealthy due to alcoholism and other things. Even more reason, everything was being reared by the women.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes some of the things that I witnessed as far as what they were laying on as far as expectations of what a man is supposed to do, meaning self-sacrifice, because that's what I'm pretty much hitting at.
Right.
I feel I'm not necessarily the self-sacrifice teacher. I gotta be honest. I'm not that. You have to assess who you're dealing with before you, as a man, just go captain save them out here, because that could cost you your life, that could cost you your finances, that could cost you many things. And I don't feel that people, when they lay expectations in in a matriarchy, when the expectations are laid on males in certain ways, men don't think about those things. So they don't think about it. They're more thinking about, how can I spend a day's worth of pay on a date, than how can I save that and invest it in my future? Because that's not, you know what I'm saying? So we're not taught to be economically conservative, or even selfish, if you want to use that term. But that's not what I've witnessed in other communities. So now that my eyes are open to that, and when I say that, I'm talking about the communities that are at the people that I know that are at the level that most of my family would desire to see, meaning we're not worried about mortgages being paid and this and that and the other. The men were the primary breadwinners, but they were also the people who laid down the structure as far as codes of conduct and expectations, meaning Arab families and Jewish families that I know of. Know some families in those communities well, and the ones that I know are really affluent, and they really, there's a high level of protection for the men in those communities. If you look at what happens in this community as far as elections, one of the things that, if you notice, Donald Trump had a lot of white women supporters who were not going against their white men. You see what I'm saying? The men, the white patriarchy, the women in that community understand some of the protections that come through letting some of that power go. You see? So
I'm gonna stop you for a quick second, and then we go get back into it. But I want to hear George's perspective, and I kind of just gave him the topic, so I don't want you to feel like hot seat.
Oh yeah.
But what is your, and when you hear, and I'm trying to phase it in a way, but our topic is us not necessarily always feeling protected, or having a lack of protection when it is about reciprocal, but it's not coming back to us. When you hear that term or that phrase, what do you think?
Well, unless, okay, so to be honest, this is the first time that I've heard it. At least that I can think of. So recently, in the recent kind of conversation, it's been the opposite. We've been talking a lot about our women not feeling protected, and particularly by us, right? Black men. But I think I see what Curtis is saying, because I think it would explain kind of like, I see, and part of this conversation has been like women are expressing themselves, and then men are injecting, instead of kind of listening and responding, we're kind of injecting in a way that's like, hey, we got to deal with this too. You know what I mean? Right. So from that perspective, when it comes to being a Black man in America, no, I don't really feel protected at all. I think that,
and I'm not to break you up, but this is not just from Black women, but just in general, even from other men or from the community at large. I don't want to isolate Black women, because I don't want that.
Right. Okay. So in general, no. Right. I mean, I think that we're the most targeted people in society.
That's how I feel.
And I mean, I don't really, outside within our community, I don't even think that there's much of a argument about that. You might hear, you get over to the white side or the political affiliation side, and you might hear others start saying, "Oh, no, you're not. No, you're not." And wanting to debate us about that. But I don't see anybody really making any
disputing it.
Any worthwhile arguments to the contrary. You know, I've heard, you know, we talk, part of the conversation is with our women is that they feel that they are the least appreciated and kind of like the bottom of the totem pole in America. Right. And I think those are two separate issues. So I never feel like, first of all, like my whole thing is that this it seems like sometimes we trying to race to the bottom to claim the bottom. And I'm just like, I can see you, Black woman, who has to deal with your own thing, being Black and being a woman, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't negate the fact that as a Black man, I feel like I got a target on my back in this country. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like I got to watch my moves and watch my steps as I navigate this terrain. Right. But I will say this, and this is my experience. They will certainly check us when they feel like we need to be checked. Mm-hmm. But if there's ever one group that I have always felt like has had my back as a Black man, is Black women. I'm getting to a maturity level where I can take their criticisms without allowing my emotions to rise up and really hear what it is that they're trying to say, and being able to understand that even if I disagree, it doesn't mean that there's no truth to it. Maybe there's just a factor here that I'm not able to consider for whatever reason. But I say again, like, nobody shows up for the Black man like the Black woman. Nobody. Like, and if we didn't have them to show up for us, it would be left to us to solve these issues that we face. So that's my perspective on it. I absolutely feel like, I don't feel protected. I don't feel protected from a legal perspective. I don't feel protected from a law enforcement perspective. I don't. But when it hits the fan, our sisters show up.
It is, and a lot of the conversation that me and Curtis have had was really personal experiences that we've noticed in our interactions with other guys. Like I remember saying to Curtis, it was a breath of fresh air that I'm starting to meet these men, especially within the arts field, that have experienced things of hurt or trauma or headache or whatever as I've felt them. Yeah. Or we both feel a certain type of way, and our actions may have been different. How we dealt with it may have been different. How we even saw it. Some of us didn't, like for me, I didn't see the trauma until I was an adult. And I saw how other people lived. And I said, like, oh, that was not normal. That shit ain't normal. Right. To be raised in a family like that. And you have a lot of bitterness and it's being transferred into the children's lives. That ain't normal until I start seeing other things and going, and they're not comparing my life, but it's not normal for a Black man never to have been given any affection, like physical affection in a non-sexual way. That's not and should not be a normal in life. And those are the types of things that kind of lead up to this conversation of being protected. Right. Some of the life decisions that our nurturers or the people in our village, the responsibility that they had, it wasn't always seen, or it wasn't shown, or it wasn't dealt with. Right. And often the Black males, and I say this a lot, there are so many programs to help women be preventative for everything from A to Z. And most times men get that treatment after they're far gone in any given circumstance, or after they've been incarcerated, or right before they dying, or when they on death row. That's when men get that type of compassion, or sometimes not, but often they get that type of therapy. And a lot of it, as up until a certain age, it's our responsibility to take over that. But because it's never been a thing in our lives, we don't even know to take on that responsibility and go out and get help. That's why we need a mediation center. That's why we need therapists around on every aspect of life. And the idea that we have on-call therapists in a school building, that's strange. It's normal to us because we've always had it. But the fact that you have to have a clinical therapist on staff in the building says a lot, when they used to just be called in at some point. But now there's a whole wing of many schools just for those types of incidents. And more specifically, because I've only ever been a man in my life, a Black man, I feel like this happens in our community more times than any of us would care to count. For a question for both of you guys, has there ever been a moment where you've tried to reach out for that support and just felt like it just wasn't there, or it wasn't for you to get, or it's been physically said that way, or in some comparison of that?
So yeah, I had a situation where my first time seeking mental health resources, and at the time, what was really most available to me and was like a walk-in type of place where they had walk-in hours.
Right.
Sat down, talked to this guy for like 45 minutes, and he was trying to put me on medication. Thank God I was smart enough to know that something wasn't right. Like I feel like I knew or had heard, or I had some frame of reference at that time, because I immediately recognized this as like, wait, this is not normal. Like, how you gonna just, like, it was almost like that's what they there for, just to throw medication at people. So that was, and that actually, I never went back to seek any type of mental health resources for probably about another year and a half, 2 years. Just because.
Imagine what could have happened in that year of time.
Right. And luckily, I wasn't in crisis or anything like that. You know what I mean? And then later, when I started to seek out, and now I'm a little older, so like I've been able to reach out to people and talk and ask for recommendations and things like that. So the second time around, it was more of what it should be. You know what I mean? Like, and it turns out, like, I don't need no medication. It's like, that was one of those situations where, it was like, this is not how it's supposed to be, right? Where you reach out for a resource and what you get is just not what you need, not what is going to benefit you, any of that. So now, thankfully, like I see a therapist. I have a therapist that I see regularly, and we just talk. It's a good place for me to kind of lay out what's going on in my life, how I feel about it, get some constructive feedback. But my therapist is a Black male. So, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's important. We got to start getting our systems in place and really start doing the extra legwork of seeking out our own, because we are. Right. And whatever you need, there's a Black person out here that's providing that. All right. They just ain't as easily they're just not as easily visible as, say, Walmart or Target. You know what I mean? But they out here.
And Curtis?
Yeah, well, I mean, I pretty much grew to the point where I just understood, ask for as little as possible. It may seem like a strange, or even a how could I say it, a sad way to live in some people's eyes. But when you get understanding, sometimes you realize it's not even the worst thing, because some of the people really have nothing to offer at the end of the day anyway. Like, nothing to cure whatever is diseasing you at that moment outside of book knowledge. That's why when he said he had a Black male therapist, that is important, because that's another level of connection that goes beyond book knowledge, if you get what I'm saying. Like, everything isn't just what you read in the book, But yeah, there's been times where I've reached out for help and it wasn't available, in particular from those in my family, because once again, it's a strong matriarchy. So some of the issues I was dealing with, they weren't even capable of speaking to that at that time, because it's certain things that males, I don't know if it's just through conditioning, nature and nurture, or one or the other, that we're conditioned to kind of just carry and be silent about, because the expectation, once again, of the idea of male strength is that we supposed to suck it up a lot of times.
Well, it's marketing as well. A lot of the programs that say, like the teen pregnancy programs, a lot of them, and I work for one of them. All of the women's side, like parts of the program, had pretty colors that were like, I don't want to get, well, I'm gonna say it. They were all jewel colors, like rose quartz and pretty really strong names. And they had one program for the men, and it was called Man Up. And I
Wow.
I wanted to know, like, could it not that we needed to get our support in a cotton candy form, but the messaging in that is just
right.
Just the messaging was off, because there was no nurturing in that. It was like, suck it up. It's the same thing. Stop that crying. Suck it up. Stop being a little bitch. It's that same mentality.
Right.
And you're now, as men get older, you're giving that to them. We're expected to be these strong creatures that can't crack. Well, now I'm starting to hear Black women say I'm not Superwoman, because I ache like everybody else. I'm vulnerable and I feel like men aren't allowed to say those things. And I'm speaking for myself. As a man, I felt like I've not been able to express hurt. Or when I do express it, you become a problem, or you become somebody. I ain't got time for that. Go man up.
Or negative. Why are you negative? When sometimes they don't understand that you don't have anybody to share some of these things with at times. Sometimes you're just trying to get it off your chest. You're not even asking them to realistically solve a problem or give you a response. You just want to, but man, I want to say this too. A lot of this is a numbers game also. And the reason I'll say that is, you look at things, for example, like war, right? Be it in the streets or on an international scale. There's certain expectations of males. I call it the male disposability factor. I didn't coin that term. It's just been out there in the atmosphere for a while, but that's a real thing. Like, one of the things I've been saying lately about males and protection, right? I've been seeing a lot of comments on like social media, or even when I scroll through Murder Inc. once in a while, where people are saying, oh my God, they're killing women and children now, as if a man's life doesn't matter. And that disgusts me. It disgusts me, because I feel like, what makes the death of a woman or a child any worse than that man is somebody's father, brother, somebody's child, and so it's certain things that are ingrained in society, where society doesn't even place the burden of protection on the society for males. And even like when you look at old war posters of people beating some guy over the head because he doesn't want to go and put a gun in his hand and go fight somebody that he doesn't even know, these types of things, like, I don't understand how people don't look at that as being sick.
Well, there's an expectation.
Then they'd have to admit that they're sick.
Yeah, you don't want to gun up. You don't want to gun up, so you're less of a man because you don't want to gun up.
We don't acknowledge or admit a lot of fairly simple truths about our nature as human beings, because then it would cause us collectively to have to take an incredibly deep look in the mirror that I don't think as a society we're ready to do. Hopefully one day we'll wake up and decide that we want to change. I always try to when I have these conversations in my circles, I always try to just I think you can take a single personal journey and extrapolate that to a society, and it's just like anything else. Like, you want to change, right? You recognize that there's some issues, you got things that are holding you back, toxic traits and habits, right? And the first thing you do is you gotta recognize, and you gotta admit to yourself, I got a problem, I got an issue. Then you gotta go about doing the work, right? And one of the things that I always have been over the last maybe 7 to 8 years have become very keenly aware of is that our sisters have really committed to doing the work. And Nate, you touched on this earlier about how they have a lot of these resources for women that they don't have for men. And now I'm starting to see these resources that are popping up that are being led and orchestrated by Black women for Black women. Like, even when they fight amongst themselves, that sisterhood be strong. I'm talking about stuff like Black Girls Vote. I'm talking about the different programs and things that have popped up, the sororities, the Black sororities that are out there, always seems to be involved in something where they're bringing up the next generation. And I feel like, I had a conversation with a buddy of mine about a year ago about the fact that, like, where is the stuff for us? Like,
it's out there.
It has to be led by us,
right? And and I don't want to discredit a lot of the groups that are starting to come up, like 100 Black Men and started a programming, but often those are rare entities, and often our program is designated with how we dress, like bow ties and making sure the young men have suits and ties, and not dealing with anything under the surface of problems, issues that they're having. The fact that till this day we still have a alarming number of single parent homes. You're starting to see more single dads, but it's still an alarming amount of single mothers out there raising children. What is the issue? We can start a movement like Black Men Don't Cheat, but and that's just to tell us that we shouldn't cheat. But outside of that, it's nothing that's going any deeper than that. We're dealing with very surface issues, or we're dealing with the really dramatic issues on a surface basis. Just because you give an ex-con a suit and a job don't mean you've dealt with the issues that got him to being a convict, an ex-convict. And that's where I'm leading. And it is on us as Black men to begin to start these platforms and start conversations and start having programming that deals with what people are really dealing with. I'm saying we're all in our like mid-30s to 40s, and it's a problem that I'm seeing in 20s and teens and even younger. It's not being dealt with.
Well,
I think go ahead.
I think to piggyback on what you're saying, I think a lot of that has to do with you gotta have it. It's going to take like a substantial part of a generation to like kickstart the process, right? Now I don't know if it's going to be our generation or it's going to be the generation coming up after us.
It has to be us.
It's going to have to take a significant portion to really kind of kickstart that, and then it's going to take some time to get to that place.
But so like it's the word, you got to say the word, George. It's called sacrifice.
Right. It's going to take sacrifice. That's a whole, man, we can have a whole other conversation.
That's what that has to happen first. People have to put their egos. People have to heal.
I believe that's why Black America really can't get itself out of that circumstances that we find ourselves in due to like white supremacy and slavery, because in order to nation build, as they call it, right? You're like, the people who built the town are not really the people who get to reap the benefits of said town. Because they were busy building it. Right. By the time it was built and up and functioning, right, they're in their twilight years. So they get to see it for what it is, but do they really get to take advantage? And like, when we talk about building like black wealth and black power, the problem is most people know. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I spend all my time building this up, that's it. That's pretty much my life. Right. I can do it for everybody else to enjoy it. And like, I don't think anybody is really in mass. There are groups. There are groups out here. I think they totally understand it, and they totally down for it. But as a larger collective, I think that's one of the things we struggle with. I think selfishness is a huge part of like not just what's wrong with like what ails black people, but what ails everything, especially in this country. All I see is selfishness. Oh yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was going to say
that I don't think a race. That I really don't believe that they are racist in the traditional sense, but they too selfish to give up that privilege that comes with white supremacy. So while they may not be out in the street saying nigga this, nigga that, or they may not be out there talking behind our backs or reckless, but they ain't trying to give up that privilege, right? Because that privilege, it works for them. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a multi-layered problem, multi-layered issue, all that.
Yeah, it has thousands of layers at this point. And I wanted to say, you know, we've been kind of cultured out of using projection. I'll call it that. We've been cultured out of that. See, this is one of the things I think in a previous talk I pointed this out about Islam. The men who are alive in Islam today, the men who really dedicate their lives to it, they're thinking 100 years down the road.
Right.
They already know they're not going to be here to see the promised land. You know what I'm saying? They know they're not going to enter in. They're worried about their children entering in. Right. So they're sacrificing their lives right now for the vision that's in their mind of what the world is supposed to be, knowing that they're never going to taste that milk and honey. We don't have
on the surface of the problem.
We're too nearsighted, bro. We're what you call hedonists. Okay. You know what I'm saying? We like that instant gratification,
right now,
pleasure, that right now. But let me tell you something that I've come to understand. This is why I didn't freak out during the COVID thing. Minimalizing and having less desires leads to less concern about this stuff. You'll be okay letting some things go and sacrificing some things when your desires and your appetite is changed. And unfortunately, the things that we entertain ourselves with most often does more damage than white supremacy could do in thousands of years, because we lock ourselves under.
Right.
It's a certain mental bondage. Like when you start feeding your eyes things like, I don't even know the women's names, but everything we see in reality TV, I'll just say that. When you leave a job that consumes 40 hours or more of your life and come home and clock into that foolishness, things that help you hate your life more,
right?
Help you get this appetite for things that don't even matter. You know, those things will eat away at your soul so bad. And leave you with your well will be empty. You will not understand sacrifice at that point. You'll spend every dollar, you'll spend every minute trying to occupy it with something. You won't even understand the value of rest. what your body needs. You need to shut some stuff down sometimes. And we've been cultured out of that type of understanding. So, but to the brother's point about the thought process that could lift us up out of this, it's time for us to examine functional philosophies, things that we can apply, not just things that make us feel good, like a Martin Luther King speech. We got to put things in a much greater perspective about what we can do that functionally works. And that's one of the things why I always mention Dr. Amos Wilson. Even when he talks about education, he says it has to be centered around the problems you have to solve. We can't just give ourselves the same education that somebody at Yale who's a social scientist is getting to come and run a Black city, rather than a person that's bred from within our own community getting information and applying and coming up with a curriculum and or program for our problems, because we have different problems down here in West Baltimore than we have in Bumfuckville, Massachusetts. It's not the same,
Let me take a quick commercial break. I just want to throw out there, if you're looking to promote your business, you're looking to promote your upcoming virtual event or your quarantine event or your products or services, please reach out to Big Exposed Radio at info@bigexposedradio.com. Up on the screen now, you'll see Vashti Blue Jewelry. It's how I've been maintaining as an artist. As this 14 has persisted, it's how I've gotten through it. So look up Vashti Blue Jewelry, www.vashti.bluejewelry. It's a girth of information on there. I have classes that I give. I have workshops that I produce in terms of showing people how to effectively start their own jewelry business, as well as showing them art therapy. Using jewelry as it's been for me. Vashti Blue Jewelry was birthed out of the murder of my grandmother, and it really gave me a sense of self and purpose. So I'll give you a number of workshops, a number of classes, and some awesome one-of-a-kind pieces made by me, and that's www.vashtabluejewelry.com. Please let us help you advertise your upcoming event, your products, and your services. Go to info@beexposedradio.com. But getting back to the conversation, I had to, pay the bills. I got to eat.
Right.
But this is, it takes me back a little bit, because there wasn't always a space for us to be able to go. You had to have a real cool person or mentor or friend that you could go to. But beyond that, often they didn't always have solutions. So, but now it's more common for us to find like-minded Black men that we can kind of, breathe, take out, exhale, if you will. And there are a number of groups on Facebook now. There are a number of men organizations. There was one down at the Living Well Center that was like once a month. I don't know if they're meeting virtually now because it was an in-person meeting, but there are a number of now programs and groups to help Black men. But one of the things that I want to say to all of those people that may have those groups or thinking about starting a group, one, understand what your intention is. If you're just seeking attention or some likes, so please don't, because Black men are really suffering in numbers that are just astronomical, and it's silence anymore. Many of the Black men are acting out now. We have the idea of a fatherless nation. We've been having programs that specifically deal with that, and we've watched that improve. But again, the mental health, the stresses of life, that whole indoctrinated system of slavery on us as it went down, a lot of that stuff is still on our backs, and we don't even know it's there. And we're feeling things, and we're going through things that we are unfamiliar with. Not just the problems of drug abuse, alcoholism, being over-sexualized. A lot of those things are not the problem. Those are the results or the reaction to the problem. And we have to figure out a way of almost protecting ourselves in this moment, because we can't rely on women because they're getting themselves together. And a lot of them don't want to take on the stress of us. So it was very important for me to start this conversation with us today because I need solutions. I need solutions. I need us as Black men to begin to not just laugh at Kanye, but if I'm close enough, like Dave Chappelle did, he went out to actually meet with that man. We got to stop looking at things and wait till they get to a Kanye level and just laugh and joke about it. It's not the crazy cousin no more. Like your crazy cousin out there killing himself and other people in the process. So we got to figure out a way to protect ourselves from the inside out. As a dad, I see your son there with you, George. And please answer this as well, Curtis. What are you giving to specifically your male children that helps them to stay balanced and focused throughout all of this? And not to say it's any different for your female children, but what is different about the love and support and guidance that you're giving to your male child?
Just giving them their space to be themselves, right? Their full selves. My stepsons are like they amaze me. I'll say this low because I don't want them to hear me. But they're like these two like incredibly unique individuals, and I just try not to stifle that. You know what I mean? Even when they, like as an adult, and I'm trying to do certain things, and it might annoy me a little bit, or if they say something that I might know is wrong, or I might disagree with, or it's just kind of like. I think that I'm very conscious of the fact that men, young men in particular, are constantly told who they should be, what they should be, how they should act. I really, really, outside of teaching those basic life lessons, like having respect for yourself, making sure that you're respectful of others, speaking to people, appropriately and things like that, but telling them who they should be and how they should be, I'm just not really, I don't know if that, I don't think that's helpful, right? Because I know that there's so many other influences that's going to be trying to say to them, you got to be like this, you got to be like that, you got to be like this. And they're 9 and 10, right? I'm like, before I start suggesting certain things, like give them time to like come into their own and see where that takes them, right? And what I try to do, and what has been the biggest challenge for me, honestly, is watching myself and my behaviors, right? So the hardest thing so far has really been changing my music. Because, like I like hip hop and I like rap and I do. Like I don't only like that. But, when I'm in the car, I'm used, when they're in the car with me in my car, right? And they'll tell me quick, or hey, that's cursing, So, and it's little stuff like that, right? Because right now, like they're I'm their stepdad, their father is still in their lives as well. But like we're the two examples for them.
Yeah.
Right? Consistently. And so I found that it's actually like watching how I do. Like, so I don't ever want them to hear me yelling at their mom, right? You know what I'm saying? I think it's little things like that I think as men are more beneficial. Like they're going to look to us to see how to move, how to navigate, right? As men. And a lot of times it's not even what we say. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what am I doing in front of them? How am I conducting myself? So having these young men in my life, I am much more conscious of that, because with my girls are there, and it's just kind of like, all the whole like parenting thing kind of goes out the window. Like, these are my princesses, right? Like, all I want to do with them is like shower them with hugs and kisses and all that, all that stuff that dads do. But then when you have boys that are watching you regularly, you become immediately aware that like what I'm doing, they watching.
But do you see that? And I want you to answer as well, Curtis. how we sometimes shortchange our young men by not thinking of them the same way we think of our young ladies. Because in today's world, we are well aware that they're facing some of the same hurdles and obstacles and temptations and just blows, life blows, as our young ladies are facing.
Right.
Is there a conscious decision to kind of balance that love and give the same type of attention? There's obviously differences, but giving our young men that same affection.
Yeah, I guess in my thinking of it, it's like all I'll say is this: I had two girls, right? And you know, like of course, like I watch my language around them again, the music and stuff like that. But the like consciousness that someone was watching me did not hit me until there were boys involved. Because I feel like my daughter, when she is taking her cues on like what it means to be a woman, like she's looking at her mom, she's looking at her older siblings, she's looking at aunts, right? And maybe I'm tripping. All I know is that the natural instinct, like the minute that I became it almost happened simultaneously. Like at the point that I realized like this is the woman I'm going to be with, it was like almost like a switch. It was like immediately I realized that I'm here and like they're watching. And it just caused me to naturally be more aware of certain things that I did not or was not keenly aware of when it was just girls. Now, I say all that to say that I'm not trying to justify it because it might actually be wrong. I hadn't thought about it until you asked the question. All I can say is that natural inclination happened when I realized that I was now like
she went to the store.
The one that these boys were looking up to.
Right. So for you, Curtis, I know you have a son, but are you preparing him to prevent him really from some of the life that you've had to experience in terms of protection and all those things?
Well, I'm actually very affectionate with my sons. I hug them often. They get, kisses on the cheek. I smother them. But I'm also very stern and direct when I need to be. I give them talks. I don't, the oldest of my two sons is 6. The youngest is 18 months. But the 6-year-old, he understands, very well a lot of things that I say to him and why I say them. So let me say this. I never want to make the mistake of not mentioning that I view what's happening in our community, especially with males, I view it as a type of warfare. And I have to say that it's definitely a war for the minds and the bodies that's going on. Not just with our males, but with the women in our community too. But specifically with the males, considering that we are in a war and the sense of urgency is much higher right now. The margin of error for them has been lowered. So it's important to really stress certain things to them and not procrastinate on them. So I speak very direct about certain things. I'm not passive about certain things. I tell them, even beyond respect for someone outside of yourself, you should be concerned for your own safety and well-being. Meaning, don't even put yourself in certain situations, regardless of, what I'm saying, that are going to cause you to have certain encounters with police, certain encounters with people from other neighborhoods. certain encounters that could cause you to have certain accusations leveled against you.
Mm-hmm.
They have to be told this very young, and it's not to put fear in them. It's because of the understanding that we are in a war. Okay? We are in a war, and they have no problem eliminating some of us through incarceration, through medical apartheid, or through you know, social warfares and various things, health and so on. We have to actually begin to raise the bar as far as the culture in which we live. And by culture, I mean the quality of the art, as the brother mentioned, the music, the visual art, the dietary element, because food is a part of culture. The social elements, how we view relationships, what's safe to do and what's not safe to do. A lot of this stuff has to be really considered and re-examined, and not just looked at through the lens of who they tell us is great based on the last 50 years. They pick a lot of heroes and a lot of philosophies that I'm open to questioning now. And I think that some of the conversations that need to happen in our community today to help us move forward, we need to put certain philosophies on the table and examine them so we can come up with the things necessary to solve the problems we face right now in this war we're in right now. We can't drag our feet on it. We can't keep waiting 4 years for a vote. There are so many things we can do right now, simple things that will cause the paradigm shift necessary for us to move forward and elevate as a people. Those are the things that I try to instill in my children. Like, don't throw trash in the street. Pick the trash up that's in front of your house if it's in the street. Don't spend up all your money on Roblox. Put some away in the bank. When you drive, stop at a stop sign. Stop signs are important. Don't tailgate people. A lot of these things may seem like small things, but I watch accidents happen almost every week. Bad accidents. People die from not using stop signs. Idiots ride through the community all the time, not paying attention to traffic signals, tailgating each other. So then you have conflict because you riding on somebody, road rage. That's a real problem. It may seem like it's not, but it's a real issue. People get shot, they get beat up. We have gas station fight, all kinds of stuff happening. So
that's where I find myself having talks with my stepsons about being slow to anger.
Slow to anger.
Being slow, because I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that whole road rage thing really spoke to me, because all road rage is like losing control in that moment.
Yeah.
And I've had, they're boys, so they can get rough with each other. They got the same toys, and they often have disagreements, but we've had, that's a big focus, is like not reacting in anger.
Mm-hmm.
And I said this to them, as a young black man, young black child, soon to be man, people expect that of you.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching a lot of just a lot of different things now that I have time to actually watch things. And I've been watching Celebrity Marriage Boot Camp. Now this seems weird because I'm not a big reality TV show, but I've gotten into watching it after one episode, not because of the crazy rich people problems or fake problems that they sometimes create in reality TV, but more so for the therapeutic side of it, because they set them up in scenarios where something like a road rage or how you deal with anger, like you have to argue at times. That's a part of life, because there's a difference of opinion, but understanding I will only raise my voice if I don't feel heard. And people being able to understand this person is we about to have a storm outside. Okay, phone. I hear it. I see it.
I hear it coming.
I'm
Yeah,
getting
it's already. That's why I moved to the car. I'm in here already.
But it gave valuable life lessons. So now when I'm in an argument with somebody and they're raising their voice, my instinct is to be quiet so that they feel so they can get out what they're saying. And I'm actually listening to them and then learning, it was like therapy watching the show for me because now I know how to engage in an argument now. I'm gonna let you talk. I'm gonna then once you finish, I'm gonna reiterate what I just heard and give you a moment to say yes, that's what I meant, or that's not what I meant, and then I'm gonna speak my piece. But just us learning how to deal with each other, communication, it is key.
Yeah.
It will save your life. I've
Mhm.
learned how to effectively communicate through this reality show. And it's crazy because I'm 37 years old. Why is a reality show about people who aren't even married, who just need a bag, who trying to get a cash flow, go through issues, but they're really just they're stumbling upon real life healing in the process. But I think today's topic about being protected, I think it is like the finger pointing out. There's a lot of self involvement and a self responsibility that is in that feeling of protection. Because why would you stay somewhere where you don't feel protected? So we got to sometimes figure out our part in this puzzle. Um, in terms of our conversation on this, what things do you think we can give to each other as Black men? We can give to our young Black boys to help them feel protected in situations. In your opinion, Curtis?
I think we have to give them a a plan and culture on how to communicate with each other. I think that's very important.
Right.
Just even listening to what you just said, we have to develop a culture on how we deal with things. It has to be taught and ingrained from a young age moving forward. Maybe we need a series of stories or something presented that can give this information. See, that's where the oral tradition comes in. Like we've lost a lot of that oracles,
Well, people don't want to be honest anymore.
Yeah, we need to have a better communication culture.
Right.
Which I think that's a good starting point right there. Just learning how to talk to each other, how to respect each other, even if we don't like each other. It has nothing to do with liking. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's respect. It's the idea of respect. We've grown into an age where social media is a like button. So we surrounded ourselves with these insufficient representations of what respect is, and we automatically skip over that and go right to whether I like you or not. I can't talk to you as my teacher because I don't like you. I don't have conversations with parents or friends because I don't like you. And it has nothing to do with like I could some of my best conversations I've had was with somebody who I didn't necessarily care about because I was able to see a human quality in them. I was able to see their perspective and I gained respect for them. It may even change whether or not you like them or not. But getting to that backstory and like you said, getting back to that idea of our oral traditions, us being able to communicate and pass down those stories. But again, going backwards a little bit, a lot of this deals with sacrifice. We have a lot of parents that are allowing children to sit on secrets or grow in the secrecy. We got a lot of people that we have parents that are now competing with their own children for resources and things because they weren't given them. So nobody is willing to sacrifice anymore so that the next generation or the next person can move up a little bit further. You know, if you, George, or you, Curtis, focus so much on your own education and getting a degree and getting a better job, and you don't give that same thing to your child, you having those things don't really matter because it stops with you then at that point. So these are going to be some hard conversations in the upcoming weeks, and it's hard for me because it requires a certain level of admittance that there is a problem. For you, George, I just asked Curtis, like, what are some of the things that you think we can give to each other as Black men and to our younger Black boys to kind of curb some of this feeling? But in your opinion, what would your answer be? Or advice?
Conversations, and most importantly, strategies for dealing with ego. And I'm starting to realize that if you paying attention, you can see, particularly in our young male children, the emergence of needing to feed that ego early. And I feel like if you catch it and you can bring them in their language, and if you can break it down into their language and have a discussion about it,
right?
Teaching them and the dangers of just what comes with like consistently being a slave to your ego. Because a lot of our resistance as a Black male community, a lot of our resistance to change, in my opinion, comes out of ego.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
I think that, so for instance, right, we raised that men are supposed to be the head. Men are supposed to be in charge, or breadwinner, whatever you want to call it. And yet you have so many of our men who are ill prepared to shoulder that burden that comes with true leadership, that comes with true being the true head of anything.
Right.
And the ego says, I am a man, thus I should be head of this, leader of that. It's particularly in our relationships with women, right? And our relationship and dynamics within our family situations. And yet, what is it other than ego to know, like, you want to be the head of the household and you can't keep a job for 6 months or more, right?
Is that our ego saying that, or is that just how many of us were raised? That was the information that we were given.
I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of both. But how we were raised has led to, I think that anytime your ego, I feel like anytime that you are in a position or you are going to be adamant about being in a position that you have not earned yet,
yes,
it's an ego issue.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion, right? You have to earn the right to be, you have to earn in order to be head of a household.
When did you get that lesson?
I didn't get that lesson. I that was a self-epiphany about 7.
That's still, when did you get it?
Okay,
like
7-8 years ago.
Okay.
When I really had to have that long look in the mirror and say, George, what is going on? Like, what you know, it really just came down to ownership. It's like, yo, things ain't going right. And you can sit here and blame X, Y, and Z, or you can figure out what you doing or what you're not doing. And it was a tough conversation. And it took work. Like, this is life. It ain't no game, yo. Like, it's grueling. It is a lot of ups and downs. It's a lot of hardships. The best thing that I feel like I can give any of my children is to check their attitude, be grateful for what you do have instead of constantly focusing on what you don't. Okay? You know, and I'll take it even further. You talk to a lot of Black people, older Black people who grew up poor, and then went on to do things so that they no longer were poor. Most of them talk about their childhood. It's like, yo, we had a ball. We didn't know we was poor, right? We grow up in a society where you grow up poor and you are keenly aware of it. And that creates an ego. It creates this egotistical, and like that is no fault of our own. I don't want anybody to think that because you may struggle with your ego that that's your fault. Right. You can absolutely be struggling with your ego based on the way you were raised and the expectations, as Curtis was talking about earlier in the show, the expectations that have been laid out for you, right, that now you feel you have to step up to, but have not been taught how to. So we get a lot of situations where men want to be this and one want to be that, and it's like, well, what have you done in that direction? Nate, we see it all the time. How many people want to be actors, but they don't want to learn dialects? They don't want to spend the time to learn their lines. How many people have you worked with that showed up on set and they trying to learn their lines the day of filming? Or they trying to learn their lines in rehearsal when no, you supposed to come to rehearsal. You supposed to know the lines for what we rehearsing tonight so that we can work on character, so that we can delve deeper.
Look at him with his metaphors and similes and such. He's such a grown man now.
Yeah. So it's like these things are things that we have to address within ourselves. And if we can find a way to do it in a group setting, that would be great. But like you asked me, it came to me realizing that what the life that I was in wasn't what I wanted. And really being like, I'm down to getting to a point where I was like, look, I'm gonna do whatever I gotta do to get out of this rut.
That's self-actualization moment. And I think that's the biggest thing I would say is self-actualization is super important. And everybody doesn't get there. Right. Everybody doesn't have that much. I felt COVID-19 with this whole shutdown would have been a time where people would have just sat still and took a breather, but that's not what happened on the mass level. There are certain things.
So real quick, Curtis, we have 2 more minutes. I'm gonna let you close us out. So you give us your last 2 minutes.
Know thyself.
Jesus wept. I really appreciate you, George, for coming on here, and little George for coming on here and sharing your space with us, sharing your time with us, sharing your honest opinion with us. Curtis, I don't know what else to say to you, sir. Like, this is needed. It is. I'm glad that I've met you and you are pulling this out of me, and because there's a level of honesty that I think as Black men we need with ourselves, with each other, and amongst all of our allies outside of us being Black men. So please continue to keep me honest in this and keep the integrity of this going, because it's required. The artist exchange is now, the rain is shutting us down. You know, it's giving us pause for a minute. So I want everybody, when you get to watch this, please share it out. Please tell somebody what we're doing here on Fridays, myself and Curtis, and if we have a guest for that day, we're going to be digging deeper into some of these men-based issues, and we're going to be telling a truth that is necessary and that's needed, and it's really a yearning. Today, I think that sense of feeling protected has now caused us to sacrifice a little bit more for those that are coming after us, for ourselves, for our legacy, and everything that's surrounding that. So this has been the Artist Exchange Radio Show. Thank you, George. Their links to their social media is at the bottom lower third of the screen, so you can definitely follow these 2 brothers. And we're going to talk more about Curtis and his music. He's getting away with things, but we're going to force him to share some of that music with us, hopefully on the next go-round. So up next is the Cocktail Social. Hold on to your britches because they about to tear the roof off of it. So peace out. Thank you, brothers. And again,
thank you for having me.
This Exchange Radio Show every Monday and Friday at 5 p.m. Peace out.
All right.